Live from Houston, Texas, this is Big Ideas, Small Business with your hosts, Brian Gendron and Savannah Roberts Schreiber. And now, the music of Max Flynn.
I'm starting to feel a little crazy again. I think it's time I start to pack my things.
Welcome to Big Ideas, Small Business, a show by business owners, for business owners, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, side hustlers. We're here to get you in business and keep you in business. My name is Brian Gendron.
Savannah Roberts Schreiber.
And I am excited to be kicking off season 4.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. We've got so many fun things planned.
Absolutely.
Maybe we start right off the top talking about the 2-part series that we're going to be doing.
Yes. So this year, one of the things that we've talked about is we want to hear more from the listeners. So as we plan for this 4th season, we thought, how will we do that in a way that will be interesting and also impactful? So what we've decided is that we will have panels. So we'll do an episode, we'll have a particular topic, then we'll invite some of you to join us on a subsequent episode in a panel format to dive deeper into that topic.
Right, and then we'll come back with a follow-up episode. We may pull from something that's said in that panel and also possibly speak with an expert on whatever topic we're talking about. So if you are interested in joining one of our panels after this show, please send us an email at info@bisbmedia.com, info@bisbmedia.com. BISB, of course, stands for Big Ideas, Small Business.
So clever.
And we'd love to get you on one of our panels talking about today's topic, which is
the leadership gap.
The leadership gap. So one of the things that we've also noticed is that we would run these shows about 35 minutes, and we'd always have more to say. So by splitting up, but by putting a gap in our discussion around the leadership gap, I think we can cover a lot more ground. By engaging with our listeners, with y'all, we can make it more interesting, more impactful, and more actionable.
Yeah, and that's really the idea. I think for everyone, this new year, after the year we've had, is going to be one where everyone is interested in going deeper and really engaging in things that have more of an impact. So less busyness and running around, and more impactful, purposeful action.
Ain't that the truth? And as we look to turning the corner and going back to some level of normalcy as things start rolling out regarding the pandemic, of course, the vaccination, herd immunity, all that stuff, we're going to be looking for strong leaders to bring us back to that level of normalcy. And so we'll be covering that from a business perspective and what we're thinking about as business owners as we turn that corner.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about a lot is that for sure, one thing we've noticed is just over time. This is not an all of a sudden thing. This has just been an over time thing. There's been a bit of an erosion of that really solid, what you look to, the Peter Drucker-esque type leadership. I feel that, like I said, this has been sort of a slow fade, and I really do feel like now, as I mentioned, people are looking to leaders, and I think small business owners in the past may have thought, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me. That leadership talk is only for those leaders that are in these large organizations and you have hundreds of people. Not true. And what, at least anecdotally, I've seen is that people really are looking to their leaders, whether it's a company of one and you're looking to yourself to make more sound decisions, or you lead a small team, or even a team of 100 plus. People really are in need of strong, solid, purposeful, I think that's a good word, leadership where they feel safe and they feel taken care of, and that the future has been considered and the path forward is being marshaled by this person or these people. I really do think that is something that we'll see more. And the data proves that true as well. Absolutely.
And there's so much content out there around leadership. Can you go through and decipher what's good and what's not, and then how do you consume information and probably maybe get it in a few different forms. So some of the things that I think about immediately are, of course, there's a lot of books around leadership, a lot of great books in that area.
We'll put them in the show notes. Yeah, we can put some in the show notes.
Yeah, some of our favorites certainly we can cover today. But also, there's seminars and groups and there's some things that you've recently taken part in that allow you to work on leadership. And so there's so many outlets and opportunities. So how do you choose the right one that's best for what your needs are?
Yeah, I think I would say, the first thing is, so our show, most of our listeners are business owners in some form or fashion. So I would say looking for a leadership development, whether it's a book, a course, a workshop, some place that you go off to, like I did at the Center for Creative Leadership for a week deep dive, that you look for something where you're going to be around peers so you can really share some of those challenges that you have and gain those insights and new ideas, new ways to look at the problems that you encounter. I think sometimes, one of the things that can happen, I think especially for small business owners, is if you think about leadership and it's a someone else's bigger company issue, then it's hard to apply those things to your organization. But when you are in either reading a book that's written by someone who has an organization of a similar size, or in some sort of a learning environment where they're your peers, these people have similar experiences, I feel like you get more out of it. And that's really where the brainstorming and the new solutions maybe to old problems emerge. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I agree. And actually that kind of looks at what we're going to be doing at these panels. It allows us to get together with other business owners. And I think the trick is with those types of things is that they're set up in an environment where everybody feels safe to share. I've seen some groups like this where they don't allow competitors within the same industry, so that there's not sort of that competitive the hindrance that holds them back. So there's a lot of things that you can look at that the environmentals around those things. And then if you're looking at a group like that, of course, it's one of those things where somebody else refers you to it.
Yeah.
Somebody's had a good experience. Probably in most cases, you don't want to be in the pilot group for something new.
Absolutely.
But so back onto to books, what are some of the leadership books that come to mind when I say books on leadership? Well,
one that's super simple and easy because it's like a paragraph, it's almost like a devotional, is the Daily Drucker. So this is Peter Drucker's wisdom, over decades of studying being a leader in business and studying other leaders in business. I love that book. Someone that I worked with years ago, almost probably 15 years ago, gave me, actually speaking of leadership, they had the Daily Drucker and I noticed it on their desk. And so I asked about it, and then every day I would walk by and say, what is the Daily Drucker for the day? Because it is sort of like a devotional. And then he left that office. This company was based, it was a European company and we were the Houston office. He left the office and he gave me the book. He gave me the book, and this was months later, because he said, he felt that it would really be impactful for me. And this is when I was, just starting my career, not too far into my career. So, I feel like that was really, a very nice and heartfelt gesture, but also sort of a seed that he was planting in me. Like, he saw something in me that maybe I didn't even really see in myself, not really thinking like, I'm going to be this business leader. And that book, it's on my bookshelf right now, and I reference it often. So the Daily Drucker, like I said, very snackable, bite-sized, daily leadership management tips and tools.
Absolutely. Something we'll put in the show notes, Daily Drucker. Leaders Eat Last was the first place my mind went. Simon Sinek. Now, Simon's so brilliant and makes things so well understood. It's definitely worth. I've read that book twice now. Yeah. And I pull away so much from that. However, sometimes he does tend to write about the larger companies, the Apples of the world. Yep. And so, as a small business owner, you may seek. Certainly, it's worth the read. But you may seek some other content.
Another one that's really great, that's relatively new, is Upstream. So Upstream is Chip and Dan Heath. Actually, I think they're at the University of Texas as well. I think they teach there, or at least one of them does. And it's all about, so we have this thing that we say at SNR Creative about upstreaming things. So it's really about looking at problems and thinking beyond the most obvious, maybe the tried and true solution, and how do you upstream? How do you make problems was such, so you solve problems such that you don't have them again. So how do you really upstream things? And they actually talk about big companies in the opposite way, in that a lot of times big organizations struggle with upstreaming because it's really hard to move a big ship. Whereas smaller companies, because there's just less friction when you do something that's different, usually have a better time at coming up with innovation and innovative ways to solve problems. So upstream, that's another really good one that I think if you're a smaller organization, like we, or even a solopreneur, because it's really about how to solve problems in a way that you don't have that problem again. You're changing fundamentally the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, we as small businesses, it can be actually very advantageous when there's big changes in the world like a pandemic to have the ability to be more nimble and agile. And you can make changes quickly and adapt faster.
Well, and that's really, and as we were talking about this and preparing for the show, that's one of the things that really got me interested in exploring leadership and this leadership gap as it relates to small business. Because of the pandemic, a lot of people are rethinking how they work and where they work. So a lot of people are saying, I've worked for this huge organization, and maybe they found that organization not as accommodating, not as able to shift and pivot when the pandemic struck. So now they're rethinking where they want to spend the next 5, 10, 20 years of their career. So we've all probably seen the data that a lot of the gig economy is not like this thing that's going to go away. I mean, more and more people are a part of this, what we used to call gig economy. I don't know, we probably should think of a different word for it. But the point is, I think smaller organizations are more and more attractive. So that gives us, small business owners, this unique opportunity to snatch up some really blue chip talent that in the past would have maybe never considered working for an S&R Creative or a Noxer, but now they're it's fair game. I mean, we are a part of that conversation because people are wanting to go to organizations that they feel the leadership, again, is solid, that there's a clear path forward, and that the company is nimble enough to change as our economic conditions change. So I think we have a really, really good advantage right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly the cloud era has also given us tools that were used to be only reserved for the enterprise, large businesses.
Correct.
We now have access to those. They're now made more affordable for the small business. And so you think all the tools out there to help you manage projects, to manage teams, now is baked into this software in the cloud, accessible anywhere. So you're able to help manage people and hold people accountable as a leader wherever they are in the world.
Well, so I just heard a story on the news, and so these things are related, so go with me. So the story was about education, and the story was about a school district. I'm not sure if it was Houston Independent School District, which is one of the largest in the country, but it was a big school district that was going to make internet access available to all their students. And so the story was about how they were going to be able to do that. They interviewed a mom who said that at their home, she did not have internet access, so her kids were using her cell phone hotspot. But she got a phone call from the school saying this was going to change and explaining to them how to access it. So then they interviewed an administrator who went on to say that the question from the reporter was, does this digital learning leave us once people are vaccinated, herd immunity, all of those things? And the administrator said no. So what we've talked about on this show is that this pandemic has accelerated the technology adoption curve by a lot. And so if kids are able to be in school and learn virtually, that means parents now have a different needs as it relates to their work. And so this is where, like you mentioned, that technology really does enable a completely different work environment than we thought of before. And quite frankly, there may be some parents who choose to work at a smaller organization just because they're more understanding about their work-life blend that they're trying to achieve, because they're homeschooling their kids in a way, even though they're getting content from whatever school district that they're a part of.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's new challenges put in the home to the average worker that didn't exist. We had our child care system in school were kind of one and the same, and in many areas that has now changed, and in some ways probably those changes are permanent, to your point. And so people are looking to find that work-life, or needing to find that work-life harmony. And to manage and lead in that environment is different. You have to have the empathy to understand what they're going through. You have to give them the flexibility to carve up their day as they need to, but also have a way to hold them accountable to the work that needs to get done, and keep them motivated towards that goal of the work that needs to get done. So some of the same tools that are that the school's using for their remote students are some of the same tools that we have here in the workplace, that now we're managing potentially across a camera, across a webcam.
Right.
We're not able to have the human touch or be in the same room. So that removes some things that as a leader you used to be able to use your charismatic qualities, or your actual presence, your physical presence, and things that you did, like eye contact and the firm handshake or whatever it may be.
Right.
Those things are stripped from you now.
Right.
As a leader, and those are just a few examples of many. So how there is a gap there in how we lead these remote workers.
And I think that's the thing. It's exactly the way you described it. I mean, so I feel like just now we're on this precipice of thinking, oh yeah, wait a minute, that means we have to lead teams differently. Oh, wait a minute, that means everything is different. I think initially for the first 9 months or so, everyone was just trying to get their bearings. And now I think people have gotten their bearings-ish. And so now it's what's next. And I really do think it's this leadership piece, because as companies, I mean, there was this big, huge article about Silicon Valley. People are leaving in droves. They're moving. The offices are closed. They don't have to be there. They're moving to different places, and in some cases changing jobs, leaving companies altogether. And just this notion of this leadership gap, like how does one become, and I would share with you, Brian, I've retired from the player coach and moving into just the coach, right? So how does one become this really dynamic coach when you don't have those physical cues and tools at your disposal? Because no matter what, people still have to be motivated. They still have to be inspired in some cases. They still have to feel cared for. And you're only a leader if people are following you. So if no one's following you because, like you said, those skills or tools that you've leaned on are no longer available, what are you going to do? And that's, to your point, the gap that I feel like we'll start to hear more about this year. And so I personally, and I know you're doing the same, want to get ahead of it. Want to already start thinking about ways to adapt so we're not left behind and losing talent and maybe even clients, because clients look to you for your leadership as well. Losing talent and clients just because you weren't able to see what was ahead and make the necessary changes.
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations on moving away from the player coach.
Still new, but thank you. Years ago I was in that situation, and it's toxic.
So congratulations on and it's going to be a challenge for sure, but I think it's...
another book, speaking of. So as I was thinking, you made me think about it, one, because we're talking about yoga earlier, and I know that's a part of your physical leadership suite. So Phil Jackson, one, has the most titles, 11 NBA titles. So I thought, okay, if I'm moving from player to coach, which those are always unsuccessful, to coach, I want to read about the most successful coaches. So his book, 11 Rings, I read it and it was excellent. And he talks so much about Zen living and how he worked with these really high performers, how he worked with those in the middle, and really built harmony, to use the word that you use, which I love, harmony in both the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers, which had different dynamics, very different dynamics that I didn't really consider until I read the book. So yeah, I mean, it's a thing, and it's not force. It's because it's just, in his case, he wasn't able to use the traditional leadership force and stick, because it's professional athletes, very high performing people, and so it was a different dynamic. But yet and still, he had to see really quickly that the way, and he mentioned some other coaches who, I think about Bobby Knight, who like lose it and yell. That's not the way. That's not the way to win 11 rings. And so anyway, I just think it's this really interesting thing, because as I read that book, it was really about my personal journey from player coach to coach. But as I learned more about him and his philosophy, I thought, well, this could really be applied to any leader, period.
Yeah, that's a great book for you because I think the first 2 Rings of His 11 were at the New York Knicks in the 70s as an actual player, right?
Yep.
And then the last 9 were as a coach.
Yeah.
And, of course, one of the legendary coaches in the NBA. But, you said something when you were talking about managing people. You were actually talking about being in the room with them. I was talking about your own mannerisms and how you lead. You were talking about responding to what you pick up from them.
Yes, I was.
And so now you don't that's also lost in communication. I think that's really important. But you mentioned also yoga and so I think there's certainly something to be said about displaying or having your own regiment of health, especially in days where we're locked down and we're stuck at home. Making sure that you yourself are going out and being active about your health.
Can't pour from an empty cup, right? Is that the saying or something like that?
Yeah.
You probably messed it up, but you know what I mean.
I got you, but and then being the example of, hey, we're stuck in this situation, work from home, at least now. I'm going to be the best, or as a leader, I'm going to show you the best habits possible, and then those may translate.
Well, and you know what's interesting? I just thought of this now when you said we're stuck at home. I had to realize that there's some people who prefer remote, that before they weren't allowed to do that. So even just understanding that in some form or fashion, I do not anticipate that this will go away. I think that, they've always been those organizations where I used to work for one that, very flexible, a large, considering remote population of like 20% of the workforce, which was huge. But now I just think that people have gotten a taste of it, and I think some people are more productive, more satisfied with their work, working more remote, only coming in and doing a touch base in the office a couple times a month or 4 times a month, and that's it. That's going to be something that when we're more in a hybrid, we're going to have to manage to as well.
I'm going to pose this to you, and if you don't have an answer, I'm going to pose this to our listeners in the audience, and this may be something that comes up in the panel. But who are the thought leaders in this space of leadership in this changed world, and in this really digital, dispersed teams anywhere in the world? Who's leading in this area? What are
it's us, me, because seriously, I don't know anyone. And I've been searching for information, and I've not seen one emerge. So if perhaps our audience does know, and they can let us know, because I haven't seen one.
Because you said something. You said the last 9 months, and I agree with you. Get our bearings straight. Just figure out what in the world is going
What's
on,
happening,
and what is our place in the world. Get our footing. But 2021 was really, for almost everybody unanimously, was a reset. We know what this is, at least for the next 6-12 months. We know how this works. We've lived through it. And so now we've got to dig in. And so who's writing? Who's the people that are really guiding and leading us in business in those areas? And I'd love to hear some feedback on that.
Yeah, I don't know. And this will be a great question for our panel, because not only who, if they happen to know, who the people are, but what do you need? What help do you need? What questions aren't being answered? Where are those sticky spots? Because perhaps that opens up this lane for that person or those persons to emerge, leading us through this. Because now they have a problem, a more straight line problem that they're looking to solve, versus just in general, how do you manage a disparate work environment? Well, yeah, I'm interested to hear from folks. What are the challenges? What are maybe the challenges that you don't talk about, that you don't mention, that you're running up against in this new environment?
I've had a little bit of experience and not a lot of success in before even pandemic world.
That's like me in tennis. A little bit of experience, not a lot of success.
Same golf too for me.
Same, yeah. Better in golf, but basically, yeah.
Where I was really gaining some valuable experience and failure is the management of VAs and trying to transition work to VAs, people on the other part of the world. And so I've learned a lot of...
For the people who may not be familiar, VA, explain.
Virtual assistant, right? So people that can help take some tasks off of your plate, some menial tasks to help you be more effective and focus on some of the higher level tasks. And virtual assistant usually it's a fairly low cost. It's done by hourly. Transitioning that work has always been a bit of a challenge, and then leading them to have drive the best results, and the results that I need has been a challenge. Many business owners have taken this approach. Many have done it successfully. So
Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week, he talked all about that, right?
Absolutely. Yep. So lifestyle by design. So if anything, and that's a 10-year-old book. That's a great one to be thinking about right now.
I mean, it's a little bit, it's radical. So we should warn people because first of all, the title, and you're like, huh? But he definitely is 100% committed to this lifestyle by design, right. and therefore you do have to make radical changes. But I do recommend that one also. Good point. I
don't think that you necessarily have to take it as radical as Tim did and be focused on this 4-hour work week, but certainly have a design for the lifestyle of work from home, support your kids, maintain a healthy lifestyle, get your job done, or lead your team to get their job done.
We're going to talk about that on our panel. I just had this moment of great idea. When we get together, it's always great. I would be curious to hear from our panelists who are yet named, but just go with this. Our panelists, what have you done to be intentional about your lifestyle design? Because one great thing, it's been a lot of not good things, but one great thing about the pandemic is everybody's slate got wiped clean. So every one of us has this opportunity to literally design life in the way that we want it going forward, especially now, like we have our footing, we know what's going to happen, we know what to expect as far as work from home and things like that. What are some of those creative ways that people have figured out how to design their life to get that harmony? Because I'm sure there are a myriad, right? There are all kinds, but that's another question for our panelists.
So I think that's a good area to dig into. The managing of employees is obviously something we've touched on quite a bit here. I love that you brought in too leading your customers. We do a lot of in the IT space for my cybersecurity consulting business. We do a lot of coaching and explaining and helping really guide these people to help put their business in the safest place possible and to have good policies and procedures in place, and that takes leadership on our part.
That's right.
Sometimes it's painful leadership. That should be the name of a book, but it's not already.
That's a book in you, Brian. Yeah. Painful leadership.
So, but now this is a little harder because within you have your company, the culture that you guide and control, and you've got some ownership, or you have hopefully complete ownership of. Versus somebody else's culture, and you've got to lead somebody else.
Influence it, right? Kind of lead from the back, right? Or lead from the middle somewhere.
Right, and now and at least for me, our customers aren't letting us in their office, and so at best we're doing the Zoom calls, and a lot of them are working from home. And to get all of them on the bus and do the things that we need them to do so we can do our job. So there's a lot of stuff that, hey, you guys need to have these things happen before we can come in and do our part, and then we're leading you towards this vision of a safer, from a cybersecurity perspective, a safer business that we're all working towards. That becomes very difficult.
Well, and you know what? That's the thing. I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's the thing. It's not that you were, but a year and a half ago, you can kind of fake. You can kind of make stuff happen, right? Because you always had the magic of getting together in person, and if you really got focused in a room, you can bang things out and get things done. Well, that safety net went away, and we really are all having to dig deep into do we have that empathy? Do we have that patience? Do we have that vision? Are we balanced as far as mentally, physically, spiritually, so we can show up and make the right call? Have we tapped? I've heard something today. The smart people. They didn't say it this way. These are my words. The people who are optimized. I'm all about this optimized life. Actualize and optimize. This is the vision. But that they don't use their willpower. They put systems and protocols in place so they only have to use their willpower sometimes, and so they have it to use. Versus all throughout the day you're extending yourself, and so by the end of the day you're toast. And so I thought, this is what we're talking about, right? So what are those rhythms and systems and protocols that we all are having to put in place to install that where what is best for you is what you also want to do. What's best for your customer is also what you want to do. It's that automatic. And I really do think it's been hard for everybody because we've just been like, and now people like you and I and our listeners, we really do have an opportunity to accelerate. If we can get our head centered faster and move, there's an opportunity.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty powerful. I mean, to re-systemize and retool your life, both in and outside of your business, right? So that you have willpower on reserve to show up when you need to, and that's a great response to what I'm talking about with our customers, and not having that in person is really makes. I'm going to need some more of that willpower, because what's happening is they lose trust. They don't know you. They're becoming distant. There's been here's one of the things that we've had. There's been turnover in management since the pandemic has started. Right, we're seeing turnover everywhere in all industries. And so now we're working with new leaders who have never met us in person. And so as a vendor or as a supplier, we're looked at in a certain light, and as somebody new to them, where we really need the willpower and really need to show up on, even if it's through Zoom.
That's right.
The best that we can to gain that trust.
Well, and you taught me something. This was months ago in one of the episodes about, even in this virtual environment, there are little things you can do to build that trust virtually. And I don't know if you remember, but we were talking about the way the camera was set and how your body is positioned. So a lot of being like in your body, aware of your body and your movements. And I still remember, and I think about it all the time as I sit through hours and hours of virtual meetings. And I do feel like it makes a difference.
Yeah, that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because as we are talking about this, Zoom with employees, Zoom with customers, Zoom with prospective employees, Zoom with managers, leaders, partners, investors.
Yeah.
Zoom
with everyone.
Yeah, everybody. your family, because you can't go home for Christmas.
Game, Zoom with everyone.
Yeah, maybe we'll make that. But there's certain techniques and things that you can do to show that you're excited. Don't forget that you can get closer to the camera, move away from the camera, make your voice louder.
You say use your planes. That's what you told me. You got to use your planes.
Use all the planes, and that is critical as a leader, as a speaker, that they can feel whatever it is that you're leading them to do through the camera, through the audio. And so those are just little kind of tips, but I'm glad that those stuck with you.
I can't wait for our panel, because now I'm thinking, okay, so we're going to talk about what challenges do people have, what problems are they running into, those sticky spots that if there were a thought leader in this space, maybe there is, but that information along those lines would be really helpful. We're going to talk about, to the point that you made, how do you still maintain that dynamic leadership that is needed, having to use your planes because you've lost some of that physical interaction, whether it's customers or colleagues. I think this is really, and then how do we have this willpower on reserve? Like, how do we automate and optimize? Oh, that's like my favorite word of all time, I think, is optimize. How do we automate and optimize our lives and design our lives? Shout out to Tim Ferriss. Maybe he'll be on our panel. You think he'll come?
No.
Okay. Well, But how do we do that so we can have that willpower on reserve when we do really need to dig deep for our colleagues or for our customers?
Absolutely. So let's put a bookmark in here. And this is our stopping point. I want to do one quick call out, probably 3 to 4 or so business owners, entrepreneurs, but potentially even aspiring business owners. We'll take a look at that. Email in info@bisbmedia.com and let us know you're interested, and then from there we'll work on scheduling. So sometime over the next 2 weeks, we'll everybody's schedules can be crazy. Of course, we're going to do it over Zoom like everything else. But this is a good opportunity to share and go through some of the things we talked about here today. And then like we said, some of that content may be cut up and put into the follow-up episode on the Leadership Gap. Of course, we'll have permission
slips. But I think entrepreneur, right? Is that what they call it? Yeah, I think that's good too, because there could be folks that are working in, they don't own the business, but they own the business unit or they own the business line as far as responsibility, and they've come up with these innovative ways to do it. And that would be kind of an interesting dynamic to hear that side also from people like you and I, who we own the business. And then for those that are aspiring, they see the opportunities in a time like this, and they're about to take the leap, and they want to be prepared and tool themselves appropriately so they don't run out and stumble out of the blocks. I think that would be a really interesting mix.
Absolutely. So if you can't hear it, we're being very inclusive in who we're welcoming into this panel. And honestly, if we get if we get too many people, we'll certainly, we plan to do these between each episode.
Yes.
And we can also take in some additional feedback over social media or via email. So info@bisbmedia.com to join our panel to talk about the leadership gap. And we'll be doing that panel within the next 2 weeks. And then our follow-up episode, which will be our February episode, we'll be sharing more content on the leadership gap.
And I'm not making any promises, but maybe, just maybe, Tim Ferriss will show up. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a special guest.
Very good. Well, Shavonna, this has been a lot of fun, and thank you all for listening. We'll be back in touch with you soon enough. And this has been Big Ideas, Small Business. Now get out there and close some business.
Central Texas reigns the strongest drink I found.
Thank you for listening to Big Ideas, Small Business. Follow us at BISB Media and visit our website at www.bisbmedia.com.